whatever, something. Anyway, okay, I'm going to answer the questions now. If you check the new syllabus, so good morning, everybody. We're going to try it this way. This is going to be fun. Nice learning experience. Hopefully you can hear me okay. So basically, since we did not sign up for an online class, this is not fair to anybody, right? So we're going to, if you check the syllabus, I laid it out. I don't have it streamed. You know, the other computer, I have it set for this. Actually, I might be able to change it, but whatever. What I've done is I'm taking all the attendance points. There were 17 points left for the semester. Those 17 points plus the 2 quizzes that we didn't take yet are just going to be divided among these little short quizzes I put on Canvas. So after class today, there'll be a little quiz on Canvas, kind of like the notes that you guys have done every day in class. So I've given you a question, you get a point. Now there's 7 points, and the other 6 points are coming from the quizzes that we're not going to take. So there were 2 other quizzes. They were each 30 points, and you're not going to have to take them. Instead, there are these Canvas quizzes. They're super easy. They're just to make sure you're paying attention to the lecture, you understand the material. There's no due date. Just get it done eventually. It's just not fair, again, because I don't expect everyone to have great internet connections. Some of you are in environments that aren't conducive to online learning. You can see I'm in my kids' playroom. I can't get to my studio. The other day, I brought home one of my computers. I brought home this microphone and audio interface. Hopefully the volume is okay. Let me know if you need any volume adjustment. I have a mixer I can play with. So I usually do it on a different computer, but that one doesn't have good audio capabilities. So this should be good. Any questions? I think there's like a 4-second delay. So my chat works. Good morning, everyone. Let me know if you have any questions. Okay. So basically the final we'll talk about later. What else do we have to talk about? Yeah, those 2 quizzes aren't happening. You just get short Canvas quizzes, and that will be, I think that'll work pretty nicely, right? The other thing is, no, that's midterms. There are a few people that didn't do it yet. Please get them in. I'm going to be lax with deadlines. I assume something happened. However, they were due before the crisis, so get them in as soon as you can. Again, I'll be flexible with all this, and things should be pretty good. Okay. So as we go, you can feel free to chime. Also, when these are done, the reason I'm using Twitch is I'm afraid of the YouTube clips I play. How are the finals? The finals, we're going to do an online final. I'll make one of those Canvas quizzes for the final. And it will have a due date, obviously, the last day of class. And it will open on May 11th during our normal final time, 10 a.m. And get it done then. And obviously, I'm going to make the question, it'll be timed. And I'll give you the details with it later. So yes, about the slides, everything up to today has already been posted, right? It's all been there all semester. I will post this. I also can make this a YouTube video. So I can't do this. The reason I'm using Twitch is I'm afraid if I play the YouTube clips somewhere, I'll get tagged for copyright infringement. So I think Twitch is okay with that. Then I can download these videos, edit out the audio, and post them if you want the lecture. All right. Because the slides will be up and that might be enough. All right. Oh yeah, attendance. I had a question about that earlier. Check the syllabus. Attendance is going to be done just through the online quizzes. So your quizzes and attendance. So how about this? Quiz and attendance points are merged. Check the syllabus to see how the points, spell it right, points are distributed. So after class today, if you go on Canvas, so Canvas quizzes, okay? There's under the quizzes in Canvas, there'll be a little quiz, and do it whenever. Again, I'm not going to rush you to get it done because I understand how the circumstances are. All right, so there'll be one after every class, and then it might be like Thursday morning or so, I can edit these presentations. Twitch saves them in here, but I'll have to edit out all the YouTube videos if you want me to put it on YouTube, so then you have it indefinitely. I think Twitch only saves them for a week or 30 days or so, and then you'll be able to watch them another time. All right, so if you ever had any questions, you want to hear me explain something rather than just read the slides, it's probably a good idea. All right, now I need my other mouse. Okay, ready? So let's do this. Feel free to ask questions as we go on. I'm checking the chat. I'm not gonna, it's weird talking to nobody. It's ridiculous. I don't want to mess my camera up, but I have a 32-inch monitor up on a stand here, and I can't see the whole thing because this other monitor is blocking it. So I can look on the screen. There we go. Awesome. Cool. So let's get started. The Baroque era, pronounced Baroque. It's a hard word to say. Baroque, sometimes it's pronounced Baroque. And there's a Barack Obama, okay? So if you can spell, you can say Baroque or Baroque, all right? A lot of people have problems pronouncing that word. Look at the time, 1600 to 1750, right? A while ago. So we're talking pre-classical. You can see this ornate decor. This is symptomatic. This is what the Baroque era looks like. All right. As with most musical innovations, Baroque music was first received with skepticism and negative commentary. Right? This name, the word Baroque, means misshapen pearl. And the term didn't come about until the 20th century. It wasn't like in 1600 somebody said, we're going to make this new music called Baroque music. That's not the way it worked. It's just the style started to change. And then people had commentary on the way the music was sounding. Here's a quote I found about the music. The harmony is confused, full of modulations and dissonances. The melody is harsh and unnatural. The intonation is remote and the motion is constrained. What does this mean? It means the music changes too much and it isn't catchy. That was basically the criticism of it. And you'll notice as we listen to this music that sometimes it's hard to find where the phrases are. And if you're not analyzing the music here, if we're not going through to figure out what these composers were doing, it's sometimes hard to find the phrase and where you take a breath. What we'll notice next week with classical music, the classical era, the music's very singable, easy to sing back, and easy to remember. Baroque music moves around a lot. Okay? So today, though, we study a lot of Baroque music and music theory, and it's known for its grandeur, depth, and technical mastery. These people, these composers of Baroque music, were really good at what they did, and they were good at organizing sound really well. So it wasn't about the catchiness of it all. It was about how things worked with each other. So a couple developments we should talk about. If you think about the time period, there was more emphasis on scientific understanding and measurement. So as science got more complicated and more interesting, people started to compose that way and started to live their life differently. They're thinking about the measurement. Are you composing slides on canvas? Yes, like I said earlier, it'll all be posted. So will the video of me explaining everything. So, click. Where's the next one? All right. So this is important. People were more interested in balance, order, and organization. Check out this artwork up here. Check out this building. Look how it's symmetrical, right? Look at how ornate it is, how decorative it is, and look how there's depth to it. Compared to what we looked at last time, a couple weeks ago, with the Renaissance era and the medieval era, especially, when everything was flat, right? Things have more depth to them in terms of art, and music was the same thing. There was lots of balance. The music was very well organized. Also, emotions were contrasting. It wasn't like everyone, it was like sad and happy in the same piece. All right, we'll hear a lot of this. And illusion is something we'll discuss a little bit too. The illusion of more than one thing happening at a time. Tonality. This word, I don't expect everyone to understand this 100%. That's not the point of this course. But if you guys remember in the medieval era, we said this music sounds like it's from another planet. This music does not sound like today's music at all. The Renaissance music, a little bit. It started to take shape. In the Baroque era, we have something called the system of tonality. That's what we use today. I have a keyboard. I can play a little bit for you. Like this kind of sound. The idea of chords. That kind of sound, the chords moving somewhere, is more of a Baroque concept. In the Renaissance, chords would just happen kind of by accident. Remember we listened to Palestrina and some of those other composers, and there were so many different sounds happening at once. Those chords were not planned in a way like, I want a C chord and then a G chord. It was more about the musical lines working with each other. So you'll notice that some of this music is very memorable for this reason. Okay? Music was ornamented. What's ornamentation? Think about a Christmas tree. You put ornaments on it. It decorates it. So the notes will be decorated. So instead of, if you hear this one note, it'll be, or like, that was actually more classical. But the idea of like decorating the music a little bit. That's what ornamentation means. All right, musical notation was changed. We looked at some slides a few weeks ago of the beautiful medieval notation. And then some of the ones that were more simplified also. It started very complicated with all the decoration. Then the notation was simplified to neumes, like we talked about at the same time. Now, in the Baroque era, the music that these guys read was pretty similar to what we have today. And there were more symbols being invented that showed what these ornamentations did and how to ornament and how to decorate your music. Right? And new playing techniques, which we're going to talk about later also. The other thing is opera. Again, we talked about this a little bit earlier in the semester. Opera is a genre, right? Remember genre, not meaning style. An opera is basically a play set to music with singing throughout. It's a little bit more in depth than that. We're going to talk about that probably Wednesday's class. But opera was not really a thing until now. Now, opera also is, it's not necessarily a sound. It's the play. It's how the music is working with the story. So we'll talk about some of the first operas. And then a lot of these terms we're using are actually still in use today. So if any of you have studied music at any time, you can thank Baroque music for, establishing a lot of these norms. So hopefully this is clear, like setting everything up. I want to just talk a little bit more about the different times of the Baroque period and what that sounded like. Then we'll get to instruments and some of the pieces. Early Baroque was more emotional, and emotions were universal. Remember we talked about when we play a piece in the Renaissance, basically everybody felt the same thing. And you can't say that today, right? If I play a piece of music for you, we play lots of stuff, and some of you said it sounded like this. Some other people said, well, I would thought that was a happy piece. I thought that was a sad piece. Emotions were more universal back then. And you knew that, what would be an example, like, was a lament. This sad, or like the idea of like, that meant something. While like, might have meant something different. And everyone felt that. You heard the music and you understood what that meant. So certain patterns were associated with certain feelings. Everyone understood. So a melodic pattern, meaning like a harmonic pattern. Apologize for the sloppy playing. It's not my instrument. All right. So basically, we all heard the same thing. We would hear that and know what that meant. Rhythm was more organized. People timing was set in stone. Like, this is how long you're holding this note. This is the rhythms we're playing. All right. And the major minor keys, tonality, they were being established. The idea of something being in key. And we use this word a lot. Some people use in key or out of key to mean out of tune. In key was not really a thing until now. Like with the establishment of key and where the tonal center is, meaning where is home. Like if I play, if you guys can hear the keyboard, again, I don't have the mixer set up right, but you all wanted to hear it resolve here, right? And if I'm playing, oh, I went out of key, right? I started hitting the black keys. And that's out of key, but, oh, out of key, but, you all want to hear it go to, right? And then it resolves. That feeling of resolution and everything, that's becoming established now. All right, this year you don't have to know how to, well, we know a little bit of reading music in this semester, but these are chords. Like this here, if I can play this with big hands. You hear how that sounded like resolute? It sounded like we started with some tension and then it resolved. That was the sound of this Baroque music. So in the late Baroque, the last 50 years, oh yeah, again, these years taken with a grain of salt. Again, it wasn't like 1600, we're starting this new sound. And the reason it ends at 1750, the Baroque era, is that's when Bach died, J.S. Bach. He was 1685 to 1750. Usually when a major musical figure dies, it marks the end of an era. And it's interesting, like looking back, in 100 years from now, when they look back to this time period, what are they going to consider the end? It seems like after 1900 hit, people just called that 20th century music, which I find very problematic because there's so many different sounds in the 20th century, which we'll get to in a few weeks. But so this is basically the last 50 years of this, what was happening. So they stopped the experimentation. They decided this is the way music should be played. We're going to set with this kind, we're going to have this kind of standard. All right. So important composers you should know. We're not going to listen to all of them. We'll spend a lot of time with Bach, though. Bach, Handel. We listen to, the Messiah, the Hallelujah, the word I can't say, Hallelujah. And Vivaldi, famous composers around this time period. And they're ones that people study a lot today. And then tonality, that we talked about, the idea of major and minor. That's like a reflection of this social order. And social order is something we'll talk a lot about next week too, with classical music and how people had this assigned social order and they know how social interactions worked with people. It wasn't as awkward as is today. All right. So people knew when to bow, when to curtsy and so on. And this was tied in to like this idea of tonality and putting an order in things. Just to jump ahead a little bit, Stravinsky, great composer Igor Stravinsky, believed that music was made to create order in things. And that's an old-fashioned concept. Like Bach, J.S. Bach, didn't really consider himself an artist necessarily. He thought of himself as a craftsman. He's like, I'm creating this music for the church. This piece of music is to be sung and it's functional, rather than these are my emotions. And Stravinsky, he was 1882 to 1971, long life, and he died in the 20th century. He believed that music was this way to create order in things. So it's kind of interesting. It's kind of a Baroque and classical concept. All right, so some instruments we'll talk about, and we'll listen to a little bit of them. I apologize if this video is going to be loud. My mixer is on this machine. I'll change it if I have to, so watch your speakers. So basically, instruments are starting to look like what we have today. So one of the first weeks in class, we looked at some standard instruments that you guys have probably all seen in band class and orchestra class. But now things have been, those are modern renditions. So basically, stringed instruments, violin, viola, cello, bass, are starting to become standardized. The violas da gamba that we looked at last time, going out of style. One of the main reasons is a technology reason. This is stuff that will be your next assignment due in a couple of weeks. Is the viola da gamba was hard to keep in tune. The thing that it was hard to be loud with lots of groups because the way it worked with frets. I don't have one, but I have. Hold on one second. Let me grab a guitar. Ah. All right. So, for example, the viola da gamba was like a predecessor to the guitar and the cello in a way. So if you see on the guitar, let me put this up to the camera. You can see there's little lines here called frets. Let me put it. There we go. Okay. And those frets tell you where the note is. So if I play, sorry, it's out of tune, but if I play a note on the string, I can't change that. So if there's a whole bunch of guitars playing and this note is out of tune, you're stuck. On a violin, you can move your finger a little bit. They can budge up or push it down a little bit, and then the note can be in tune with the other violinist sitting next to them. But the viola da gamba was like the guitar in that it was hard to blend. It would be blended nicely, but if you had too many of them, they'll be out of tune. So as technology improved, they were able to, use these other instruments and have these bigger orchestras. Okay, so mandolin, guitar. Mandolin, it's like a cross between the guitar and I have one. Hold on, show and tell. This is good. Let me grab. This is the benefit of not being in that classroom. Is I don't have all my instruments here, but I have like half of them. So a mandolin, it's like the size of a violin. It's tuned like a violin, but it kind of is like a guitar in that it has the frets. And if you play with the pick, you can get. Right? It's like a little mini guitar, but it's used a lot in country and bluegrass music today. But it was an instrument in like the Italian Baroque. They would use this thing. Anyway, so guitar, you guys know what that is. Woodwinds. If you notice the words Baroque flute, Baroque oboe, there were smaller, simpler versions of what we have today in the flute and the oboe. The chalumeau was like part of a clarinet. Clarinet evolved later from the cello. And the dulcian, however you say it, is like a bassoon. It's like a really, really simple bassoon. The brasses, we got Baroque trumpets, and we will listen to a little bit in a second. Serpent and sackbut were still things. Remember from last time? The thing that looked like a serpent, and the sackbut looked like a trombone. Keyboards, you notice there's no piano. Piano was not yet a thing. We had clavichord, which is kind of like, it's a different kind of instrument, kind of like a harpsichord, and an organ, which we'll look at. All right, so we're going to listen to this Bach-Brandenburg Concerto. Now, why is this interesting? The trumpet part in here was played without any valves. So they were just blowing through a tube, okay? And the way they were changing the notes is by adjusting their lips. And not to get into too many physics and complicated things, there are only so many notes they could get. The notes get closer together as they went up higher when they tighten their lips higher. But there's so many notes this instrument couldn't play. So in order to do a lot of these notes, they have to adjust their lips on the fly. So it's really impressive how difficult this was to play. So here's a little bit of Bach. This is called the Brandenburg Concerto. Good. All right, how is the volume, by the way? You guys able to hear that? All right, how is the volume, by the way? Oh, I'm hearing myself. If not, I can change it. I have a mixer on my other computer if I need to adjust that. So let me know if the volume is okay. Yes, it's good. Awesome. Cool. So do you hear how many notes there were happening? And that trumpet player is playing boop, 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 just with their lips, with no buttons, no valves to press down. I think that's just pretty fascinating. And it determined what the music sounded like at the time. To me, what does this sound like to you? Kind of sounds like, to me, it sounds like Christmas. I don't know why. But I think about how the music sounds so bright because only certain notes were available. And as technology improved in the next century or so, the instruments were able to do more, which allowed for louder music because they were able to play out more, music that was more in tune, and stuff that was a little bit more colorful. You know, more keys, more notes can be played. Guys, think about those things as we listen to a lot of this music. A symptom of the time, all right? Look at these nice Baroque artworks. All right, here's what some of these instruments look like. Look at how simplistic this thing is. Like, look at this. This is the Shalamo. This thing here, it looks like a clarinet, right? I think the mouthpiece is on backwards. I don't know if the reed was played on top like that. That doesn't really matter. But you see how simple it is? There's no key. I mean, I don't want to do show and tell all day. But I have a lot of my instruments here. Maybe I'll show you later in the semester. To show you all the key work that's on a lot of these instruments today. And back then, it was basically just this tube. Look at that, tube with holes in it. Look at this thing. That's it. That's the Baroque. I mean, that's like look how simple that is. And this here, it's clavichord. See, the strings, look how ornate. It's kind of opposite, right? The keyboard is more ornate here than what we would have today. Yet the wind instruments are simple. Look at this thing, this lute with this long bass strings right here. I think it's called a theorbo. So it's got all these strings, like, see how his hand is here? You don't put your hand on this part. I don't know if you see my mouse. Yeah, I have actually a pointer. There we go. See this long spot right here? Those are for bass notes. And he can play bass notes on that without moving his fingers, just with the right hand. And then the left hand is changing notes in this part of the lute here. So you don't see instruments like this anymore, right? All right, anymore. Anyway, so check this out. Organs. Look at this one up here with all the black ornate. Look how decorative this is. People spent a lot of time making instruments look good. And it was for the church. People were super religious, right? And that was part of, their musical experience. They would go to church, part of the church experience, and they would have this ornate, beautiful organ to look at. So see this? Now this one's a little more crude down here. But can you see these down here, these pedals? So the organists played with their hands, on the keyboard, and then their feet would play the bass notes. So these pedals down here, if you can see okay, this isn't popping up. Cool. Oh, it is popping. All right, I see. I'm looking at my other screen. So these brown things down here are laid out like a piano keyboard. So they can play like low C, low D, low E with their feet. And that gives you that low drone as they play on top of it. This one has multiple keyboards here for different volumes, different sounds. See this keyboard I have right here, this little Casio keyboard, my son's keyboard. He's letting me use it. Like I can just hit a button and it changes the sound. They couldn't do that. They had a sign with these pipes. See these things they pull? those were let different pipes open up in the organ. And the sound would travel a different distance and get a different sound. So they can make it sound like a flute or like a stringed instrument or something. It would emulate that sound, simulate that sound in a way by mixing and matching different pipes. And the music, the air would come out of them at different speeds, and it would try to sound like a different instrument. But it wasn't a synthesizer, really. It wasn't synthesizing anything. Kind of interesting how these things worked back in the day, these organs. Now, today, most churches probably have an electric keyboard. Unless they can afford, I mean, some of them are super rich and they can afford stuff like this, but pretty fascinating. All right, so here's a couple little videos about some of these old instruments. This first video is a cartoon someone made, not for my class, but for a class like this, talking about Baroque orchestra. So let's watch that. You should be able to hear it okay, I hope. And then the other one is, again, I'm hearing different things. I'm monitoring it differently. The next one is actually performance on some of these old instruments. You can hear they sound a little different. How the evolution of the orchestra, right? We think of these orchestras as these huge, big ensembles today, but they're saying 30 people max. And what instruments are actually popular? Clarinet is pretty new. It's a relatively new instrument compared to these other ones. And he brought up Lully. Weird story about him. Apparently, he was the one that he conducted with a staff. Instead of doing this kind of conducting, he would slam a staff into the ground. And apparently, he once hit his foot and like stabbed his foot and got gangrene and died because of it. It's just like such a weird story. And he was one of the first conductors of these orchestras. But you see, as the orchestra technology improves, allowing for more instruments to be invented, allowing for new sounds and more interesting music. So that's a Baroque development. Here's a little Baroque group playing the Badinerie from Bach's Orchestral Suite No. 2. Seriously, everyone had this ringtone in 2001. This is when you had those old Nokia phones on the first cell phones. And they had like 4 ringtones you can choose. And this was like everyone's ringtone back then. But check this out. Check out that flute. You see how it was just so simple compared to a modern flute, which has all these keys all over the place? This one was just pretty much a piece of wood. There might have been only a couple keys. And you hear how mellow it sounds? It's not as piercing I don't want to say harsh. Yes, to make sure attendance is coming from the quizzes, yes. Because it proves that you were here. I'm not taking attendance with Twitch and looking at your screen names. It's crazy. How can I take, I thought about doing Zoom, but that's messy because then everyone's video. I tried Zoom. I've been using Zoom for my private lessons, and it's okay. It's okay for that. And it's okay if like I were in charge and we're having a meeting, but we're not doing that. Like a small class, I would do that. So anyway, that's a Baroque orchestra. Simple kind of sound. I'm not simple in terms of composition, but the instruments weren't as piercing. Right? And the harpsichord. You saw the harpsichord with the 2 layers of keys. All right. So another instrument we should look at, the viola d'amore, the viola of love. This video is in French, so just read. Basically, what this is about is an instrument that's kind of extinct now. And it's things people experimented with. Like, check out how this instrument worked. It had strings on top, like a normal viola. But underneath, there were more strings. And then she talks about how difficult this thing was to tune. There's all these strings on this thing just to get bigger, louder sounds out of it. But the problem is it's really complicated. So I'll play a little bit of her talking about it. Again, it's French. Just read along. And then listen to it and say, like, why do you think this is extinct? Yep. Dimension with that. Here, as you said, how at 7 strings on top, 7 underneath. So 14 strings. Takes a long time to tune. That's an issue. But here, as you said, it was made out of metal strings. So they resonate for a long time, which I think is really interesting, right? To have this instrument that can last for a long time. You can't, like a guitar, for instance, like this thing, if I strum this as it has the gut strings, this is nylon strings that used to be gut, but it's dead, right? If I hit a single note, I mean, I'm cheating by putting vibrato. Right? It just disappears. So the problem was that was just too much, and it wouldn't blend with an orchestra well. All right, and as orchestras got bigger, they didn't want to play the violas d'amore. They would want to play a normal standard viola, and when only 4 strings to tune, and it blends a little bit better with the other instruments. Okay, so I would reflect on that, like how technology. I think experimentation is awesome, but how does it work, and the practicality of it all. All right, some vocabulary I got to talk about now. This one's a little complicated. I'll show you the next slide, some of the specifics. But basso continuo is how music was written for accompaniment instruments. So it was an accompaniment written with a new music notation system. What this meant was keyboardists would see just a bass line, and they'd have these little numbers underneath the bass line. And they would look at those numbers and know how to turn them into chords. And I'll show you in the next slide a little example. I can't do it very well. I can do it by hand, but I'm not a keyboardist, so I have to futz around. But this was apparently easier for people to do music this way. But the problem was, too, you get these bass lines, and all the bass instruments would play the same bass line. So whether you played a bass, like a bass, with the string bass, or bassoon, or any other bass instrument, you're all playing the same thing. So it's very bass heavy, which is likewise, like today's music is very bass heavy. People love that sound of big, thick bass parts. The problem is bassoon players need to breathe, while string players don't. So I've played bassoon in an orchestra when we play music like this, and I'd just be out of breath all the time because you have to constantly just these bass lines that you're supposed to be breathing, and you don't have time to breathe. So that was this cool issue, this new thing invented for Baroque music that we'll look at in a second. The other thing, you know what this is. Monody. It's song texture. The idea of music for one melodic voice with accompaniment, right, in the early 17th century. So you have this idea of a song, in a way. And though there weren't many songs per se, this was still that kind of texture. The idea of a solo piece for an instrument, like a violin, and then someone backing them up. That's a Baroque concept. Homophony, music with one melodic voice and rhythmically similar accompaniment. That's chordal harmony. All right? So you have a melody, and then, when you have a choir singing, even though they're all singing together and in the same rhythm, the idea is you have one part is the main part. One part is the melody. They're singing the main words, and then you have everyone else backing them up. Right? So there is a main one, but they're moving at the same time. That's the idea of chordal harmony. That idea of, right? There is a melody there, but it's being backed up that way. New genres, okay? Opera is dramatic. Opera has lots of drama in opera, right? It's a musical form. Other ones that you don't have to know a lot about these. I just have to bring them up. The oratorio was a biblical. Apparently, that Kanye West piece, Nebuchadnezzar, you call it, right? They said it was he said he was calling it an opera. Apparently, it's an oratorio. The way it was staged, people were saying. Again, I'm not fluent in all of this. Exactly why? What's the difference of oratorio versus cantata? It's another one. Cantata is like a song, but there's a chorus in an orchestra. You know what I mean by chorus? A big group of people singing. So you have this big group of people singing, and you have a lead singer, and then an orchestra behind it. But they were dramatic. It wasn't just like a 3-minute long song about something. Except Bach wrote a coffee cantata, all about coffee. So that was kind of silly. But a lot of them would be a lot more drama involved, especially opera. Opera was tragedy, right? There were comedic operas later on, but at this time, most operas were tragedies and were sad and depressing. So we'll discuss them a bit. This example, you don't have to know exactly what this means. Here's what I want to bring up: what people had to deal with at this time. If you look at, I found this top one online, and if you look at the little notes. Actually, ignore the little notes for a second. Look down here. What the keyboardist would see is just this kind of bass line. Oh, sorry. They would just see a bass line, and they know, well, I got to fill this out. I'm sight reading. Really? That's pretty, but that's not right. Maybe it is right. Yeah, it is. Cool. And so on. And they would know how to fill out these chords just from these bass lines. Just from these numbers underneath. So for an example, like look at the bottom one here. See how it's empty up here in the treble clef? The right hand? Because that was for the keyboardist to put in their own part. But they would do it on the spot. So it would be like a church gig. And they'd show up on Sunday and they would be given that. And I'll walk in with a bassoon. I didn't live back then, but if I did, I'd walk in with a bassoon. I would have to go boom, 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 boom. Easy. The bass player, easy. The keyboardist, though, would have to look at this and say, well, we're in the key of G minor with a Picardy third, and the first chord says B flat, so that means I'm going to play that, which is the G minor. Like they have to do all this math in a way on the spot. And that second chord, so that's got to be, that's a D in, that's going to be, hold on, it's low A, so, that. And then, so you have to figure it out on the spot. It's fun. It's like a puzzle for those of you that like puzzles. And for those of you that are interested in music theory, this is the kind of stuff you do in a theory class. What I like about it is there is a little creativity involved, but there's also a right answer and a wrong answer. So it's easy to grade, right? It's not subjective. Like, I don't know what you really mean by this. It's just like, hey, you're right. You can be wrong with this, but you can also, there's different levels of right, which is really fun. So it's a puzzle. And this is how music's written when they're figuring out harmonies. And this is why music can never end. There's always going to be something more interesting because it all spins from this. It's like you have a bass line and you learn how to write harmony over it. There's so many options you can use. So this is the way music was written. So you got to give a lot of credit to those people that wrote in the Baroque era and how much skill they had. They can look at these numbers and know what chords to make these. And it's kind of similar to jump ahead a few centuries, similar to jazz music. And this is what jazz music was all about. It was the same kind of idea. They saw a symbol and they knew how to make it into a chord and then turn it into and improvise. So, all right, some vocabulary before we listen to some new stuff. New techniques, some things you should know about. Tremolo, rapidly repeating a single note. I can show you again on a guitar. If I play a single note, tremolo would be. Actually, hold on, I hit the little mandolin. There we go. That's like the key to mandolin playing. There you go. Right? It's just that really fast iteration on one note. That was a new kind of Baroque sound. A new sound in the Baroque era. It gave some more presence to the instruments. Oops, I'm clicking the wrong mouse. Pizzicato. Pizzicato is pretend this is a violin. I don't have a violin. But if this were a violin, instead of using a bow, just plucking with fingers. So it gives a sound, it makes it sound dead, right? Very dry. Instead of that bowed, long kind of sound. Okay? New techniques you're experimenting with. Ornamentation we talked about a little bit. Decorating the note. Adding some color to it. Like letting players take their own liberties. Kind of freestyling, if you will. You know, you're given the main melody and then you mess around with it. Kind of like what they do at a baseball game when the soprano is singing the national anthem, right? They take liberties with the melody. That is ornamentation. That is a Baroque concept. Okay. Opera terms we should talk about. The aria and the recitative. So we have aria, recitative. Right? That's the way it's pronounced. So the way operas are broken up, and you're going to hear these terms a lot as we're not going to spend too much time on opera. I'm not like opera is not my main thing that I talk about. If you guys are really into opera, I can forward you some resources. But an aria is an emotional vocal solo with no plot involved. Meaning, it will basically be, let's say the soprano. Let's say she's the woman involved, and she sings, "Oh, I love him. I miss him. I love him. I love him. I miss him. I love him." That would basically be the words in the first part. Then the second part of the song, it would be a song in the aria. It would be like, "Oh, why did he cheat on me? I hate him. I hate him. Why did he cheat on me?" Then it would go back to, "But I love him. But I love him. But I love him." Oh, lots of high notes and everything. That's basically what an aria is. They can be a little more complicated, but it's basically this ABA form. So an idea, a contrasting idea, back to the original idea. But there's no plot. It doesn't advance the plot of the opera. It just talks about her feelings. The recitative, on the other hand, is more spoken. It's more like, close the door, don't let them in, turn on the light, turn off the light. It's just like, just saying what's happening. We were going on the boat, we were going to the castle. Like they're talking about what's happening in the plot. And the style of singing, it's not like talking, but it's like a little bit more rhythmic. Kind of like rap. It's not like rapping. Maybe a little bit. But it's like this rhythmic kind of singing. All right? Rather than this holding out long notes and everything. And usually the aria has more music in the background. Recitative could just be like, oh, do I have a harpsichord on here? Yeah. Doesn't sound very good, but it would be like, we're going to the castle, you know. Okay, let's leave now. And it would just be like hitting a chord and, you know, and hitting a chord and holding it. And then people talking and saying what's going on. So those are the main parts of opera in this time period. A ritornello is another little thing in a lot of this Baroque music. It's like a hook in today's music, if you're going to use a term from today, or like the chorus. There'll be a piece of music you're listening to, like you'll hear like a hook that you remember. Then it goes into something else. And then it will go back to a ritornello. It means to return. That's the word, to return. So you have a musical idea, ritornello, go off, not on a tangent, but into something else. Then it will return to the ritornello. And a lot of music was written like this, even in operas as well. We'll look at some examples of this probably Wednesday. All right. And concerto is an important word. We talked about concerto a little bit this semester. I know we listened to a few. But the concerto, the idea is a genre. Remember, it's a genre, just like opera is a genre. And song is a genre. So a concerto is a genre that features a soloist with an orchestral accompaniment. So again, the piano player up front, showing off, clarinet player up front, showing off, and then backing them up. Okay? So get these terms, know what these mean, basically. Most of them are mostly for context and things, so you know what to listen for in this music. But opera is really important. It'll help you listen to opera. You'll understand it better if you understand these terms and what you're listening for. Okay, so let's listen to a couple pieces before we're out of time. All right, Vivaldi. Vivaldi was really popular at the time, which is interesting because we're going to spend a lot of time on Bach on Wednesday. Bach apparently wasn't popular at the time. His music wasn't rediscovered until hundreds of years later. But Vivaldi here was a famous violinist at the time. And he wrote a group of 4 concerti each based on a season. So he's got summer and you know the seasons. So this piece is called Spring. So it's the first movement. Now listen to how bright and happy this is. But listen, this is an orchestral piece, but it's just strings. Listen how few instruments there are compared to orchestra music in the classical time periods today when you have these large orchestras. This is featuring a violin. So check this out. You probably have heard this. All right. Okay, the ritornello, right? Oh, too many speakers sound. So you hear what happened? There was a little hook in the beginning. Then it went on a new little thing. And then back to the ritornello. Does this sound like spring? Right? Like I think it's important to think like, what makes this sound like spring? I don't actually know the notes, but it sounds like spring because it's bright and cheery. If you listen to Summer actually is pretty metal. If you check it out, it's like a lot of notes all over the place. It does sound like spring, right? Yeah, it sounds like spring because I just think because it's bright, and people usually associate spring with bright and going outside and being social, except for this year, right? Actually, it's kind of gross out today. But it sucks. Like I'm trying to go for a walk in my neighborhood, and it's like we see neighbors, and we're just like across the sidewalk, like, "Hi, can't touch you, can't pet your dog." But spring is supposed to be bright and uplifting. I mean, the video helps too. So, other one we got to look at is Corelli. Now, this guy, see, early mid Baroque, early Baroque. Oh, my face turned red. That's cool. It's this huge monitor. This looks ridiculous. This other guy, Italian violin music is worth talking about. Yeah, back to Vivaldi, Italian. Antonio Vivaldi, right? Then we got Arcangelo Corelli. They're all Italian. He expanded the technique of violin playing. And why is violin so important? Violin is like the main instrument of classical music, right? The violin is an instrument that has been around for hundreds of years and barely changed. It's not like the wind instruments we talked about. Like I have wind instruments here that are so different than they played back in the day. Violin is basically the same. All right, so Corelli helped saying, well, what can we do with this thing? How do we keep improving it? Using repeated notes at fast scales. Like you can play super fast on a violin. That's just so interesting. I can't, but one can play fast on a violin. I don't play violin, but if you guys ever play violin, it's something you can play fast on. And he did these things when you play more than one string at a time, which is pretty fascinating. And the idea of virtuosity. I think this word virtuoso is just for music. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I rarely hear this term virtuoso outside of music. But a virtuoso, something that's virtuosic, and to show virtuosity is like showing off. Like how good are you at the instrument? How good are you at you know, even rappers do this too, singers, any musician is showing off how good they are at something. So I don't know if they use this term in sports or anything else, like to be a virtuoso, but all right. So he basically made Italian music into prominence, which is Italy was where a lot of this stuff started. Italy was like the driving force of Europe and music at the time. And today, sadly, Italy is on hold, right? Today specifically, but I'm talking even the past 50, maybe past 100 years or so, Italy has been kind of stagnant. That's why there's a lot of Italian immigrants in the U.S., right? Because Italy has kind of stopped after the fall of the empire, and hundreds of years after that, it's just been all over the place. So Italian violin music was pretty popular. So also, it's important to the idea of tonality. And you guys, when you're listening to this music, you probably say, hey, I recognize that tune. I've heard this before. This sounds memorable because it's tonal, because it's not using that old-fashioned kind of writing. All right, so check out this. This is a violin sonata, Opus 5, number 7, Prelude Vivace. It just means it's a sonata for the violin. So it's song texture, right? The harpsichord is backing up the violinist. Opus 5, number 7, you could think of that as like the 7th track on his 5th album, if you really want to be like pop music terms. 7th track on his 5th album. The prelude is just the beginning, and vivace is the speed. And you know that from the time we went over those terms. All right? So let's check this out. You hear how, I mean, like decorative. There's lots of sounds happening, right? He's adding a lot of special effects to the sound, making it sound interesting throughout this little short piece. But you hear the violins in prominent, and then the harpsichord is backing them up. Oh, I just got an award on Twitch. Build a community, whatever that means. Maybe because a lot of you were watching. Cool. Anyway, good. I put a note to myself to stop here, and so I want to just take questions. If there's any questions, you can contact with chat. I can't see your hands. If you contact with chat, if you have any questions. So basically, what you should know. We're going to continue with Baroque on Wednesday, but know these terms. At 11:15, the quiz will open. So go on Canvas, answer the questions. You have all the time you need. Again, I'm going to post the slides and a video if you want this talking, the dictation. I can make it on YouTube. It'll just take a little bit of time because I got to download it and I have to go in and edit out all the YouTube videos so I don't get sued for copyright. Else I can just put up the what's it called, the Canvas slides, but that's not enough. It might not be enough. All right, so I'll stay here for a couple more minutes. If you have any questions, I'll have the stream on and I can explain anything because we do have time. But this works, right? Thankfully we have technology. Imagine if this happened 10 years ago or more, obviously. Like, it would be a disaster because a lot of people didn't have Wi-Fi. Maybe 2010 they did, but like 20 years ago, no way. And we didn't have fast internet. There's no way we would be able to do this. And so we should be thankful. And a lot of you, if you're parents working from home, I mean, I feel bad for the people that can't do that, right? No, the quiz will be after each class. So basically there were 77 points that had to be distributed. So it's not every class, actually. I divided them up to 11 7-point quizzes. 11 7-point quizzes. So I can actually bring up the syllabus. I have it right here. Here we go. If you guys can see, is this streaming on here? Yeah, here we go. Good. Let me do, this monitor is ridiculous. I can't even see where anything is. It's just like so crazy. All right. So basically, I put it in red, all the changes. All right. So 13 is points, amazing rating 17. I can do math. Yeah, after here. See, there's a little break. I put spring break, and then here's my links to stuff. Now, right here, 7 points. So today and Wednesday, do them. Next week, there's one because there is still an assignment. There's still 2 assignments. The 2 20-point assignments, the writing assignments. All right. I'll tell you what they are next week. They're very different than the first 2 we did this semester. They're a little short writing because, again, at Montclair, we have to abide by certain rules. You need 2,000 words per class, at least for this class. And you did 1,000 for your midterm. So the other 1,000 are going to be, 500 roughly in each of these little short assignments. And that's short, guys. That's not a lot. And then there's a little quizzes. See where I marked where they are? All right. And at the end, there is nothing. So we'll be done with those May 4th, and then May 6th is a review, and then the final. So I'll have to I had a final made for you and everything, but we're not going to be doing this in person. So I have to remake it for Canvas, and you'll take it there. And I think it automatically grades, so that's pretty nice. So you get your grade right away. And again, don't worry about due dates, because I know there's stuff happening. I know how tricky this could be. Doing things from home. We have Wi-Fi issues. You have kids or parents that need a computer. I know my son needs a computer to do his work from home. If you have younger siblings that need that, I don't expect everyone to do this. You could do it. I think you could do them on your phone, but again, I don't expect everyone to have a phone and data and everything. So you didn't sign up for an online class, so this should not be treated like an online class. I just don't think that's fair. But we also have to do what Montclair is saying. You know how many email chains I've been in since the past 3 weeks saying what to do. And everyone has their own idea of the best way to do it. A couple of my friends have done Twitch. That's why I decided to do it. The final, it's going to be like all the quizzes come out. Honestly, I have to remake the final, and I want to make it fair. I will put some screenshots up of the music notation, so we'll have music notation on it. But I have to figure out what's going to work on Canvas. So I'll get you more information about the final when we get to at least April. So let's just get through this. Probably the end of April. I'll have more information exactly how I'm going to do it. Because again, I had one made for you guys already, and it's just not, going to happen because we can't be at Montclair. Like someone had it. There's some people I know that had it at Montclair. It's dangerous. You'd rather do this? Thank you. Good. I'm glad. I think this is better than Zoom too. I've been using Zoom for one-on-one thing. I'm actually going to see my niece and nephew on Zoom in a second. We'll see if they want to see me, see how that works. But I think Twitch has the platform. And if you guys follow me, that would be fun too. Because then you can keep in touch with things. Sometimes I'll stream composition. My friend told me I should do like Bob Ross of music stuff. When I'll be like, here's how to write a happy song. Instead of happy trees, right? And then that'd be kind of fun. Final would not be... the final is the same day. So all we lost, when they extended spring break, we lost 2 classes. So I just killed 2 of the... Killed, that's a horrible word. I removed 2 of the classes and just merged. We don't need 2 classes on pop music. And there was another one I think I deleted. So I found a way to kind of condense things a little bit. And we'll get it to work. I've done... You know what's funny? Up until this school year, Montclair used to have 14-week semesters, and they changed it to 15. So my plan, I always had a 14-week plan, and then I made a 15-week plan last fall. So that's fine. So the final, we'll do the same final on May 11th. You'll do it on Canvas. I'll just make it timed so it's fair. You're going to be able to use your notes, obviously. There's no way I can control that. It's just the questions will be difficult. You have to know the material. If you're searching your notes form, you're going to run out of time. You won't do well. So I'll let the notes. It might make me make it a little more difficult. I'm not here to. I want everyone to pass. I want everyone to get an A, right? I want you guys to do well. So I want to make sure it's fair, but it has to be challenging because I can't. If everyone gets an A, my supervisor will be like, "What the hell? Why did everyone just get an A?" So I got to be, you got to be fair here. So also one other thing, I did get an email. I'm sure you guys saw this. If you want to opt for pass-fail, you can do that. You have more time to sign up for pass-fail. So check your email. Who was it from? Grading policy. Yeah, Kenneth Summer. I don't know if you guys got it. No, it went to my. I might have to forward this to you guys. I don't know if you. Kenneth Sumner. He's an associate provost. He sent the thing out. If you have. Oh, up to May 4th. You guys can decide. I gotta bring the chat back. You guys can decide if you want to go pass-fail up until May 4th. So if you feel like you're not going to be able to do well, and then we'll figure it out. That means if you feel like you're going to get a D, you still have to do your work, right? You still have to take the final. But as long as you get, I pass people if they've done everything. In the past, I've had some people have a 40%, but they'd pass because they've done everything. Yeah, cool. I'll post that. Let me post that. Thanks. If you guys didn't get that. I'll download this PDF and I'll post that on Canvas as soon as I can. Let me do it right now. Where with Canvas in structure. Let me just do this right now. A couple computers. What class is this? Intro to music. Files. I'm going to upload that thing I just downloaded, that pass fail. Good. So check that out, just in case you want to do that. I'm sure most of you will be okay. You won't have to do that unless you feel like you don't want to get a bad grade. That's what they did in other problems. Like my mom was telling me, she was a college student during Kent State. I don't know if you guys remember that. It was kids were protesting outside of Kent State University, and police killed some students, like because of protesting. And it was a big deal. And my mom said her school just went pass fail. They didn't have online school back in the 70s, but it's usually when something this is worse. I mean, that was horrible because people died, but thousands of people are dying. This is a lot more intense. So stay home, do your work. It's a good time to study, read a book, play video games. Everyone's talking about Animal Crossing. I haven't gotten it yet, but my entire Twitter feed is people talking about this Animal Crossing game. I don't know anything about it. I've been playing Stardew Valley, but do your work. I'll get your, if there's any late grades, please get them in. I have more time to do it because I don't have to commute now. So this should be fine. So again, my email's open. I'll be checking it throughout the day. Or Call of Duty. If you guys like Call of Duty. Yeah. I have a Switch. I don't have any of that stuff. I don't know. There's a lot of sales too. Like I said, guys, stock market's crashing, but I've not played the new Final Fantasy VII Remastered, but it looks amazing because I don't have a PS4 and I'm going to order one. I didn't know it was out yet, but I played Final Fantasy VII again on the Switch. It wasn't remastered, but it was really cool. But I want to get the other Final Fantasies that were remastered that look beautiful. Like 8. I know a lot of people don't like 8. I loved 8. And they remastered it. It looks gorgeous. And same with 10. And my daughter wants 10 too, even though she's only 4. But she likes superhero girls. But yeah. Cool. So have a good day, everyone that is leaving. You may leave if you want to. But yeah. So seriously, don't go out. I have to just keep telling people, like, it's bad. Because just in case you might survive and you might be fine, you have parents, grandparents that might not. And that's what I'm afraid of. My grandma is 94. She's at home. I don't know. And she has neighbors bringing her food. But that's what you got to do. If you have any elderly people, they can get really sick from this. So hopefully it all blows over. And hopefully by the summer we can all start going to the beach. And I can go to Disney World and we can have a normal life by June. But we'll see. All right. So let me know if you have further questions. Take care. Get your work in. I guess, again, I'll be checking my email throughout the day, and I will, I'll post this again. I'll post the slides. Eventually, I have to edit them again. We still have Wednesday's class, and it's on the same presentation, and I'll just do that, and I'll put it up after Wednesday's class. So remember to keep taking notes, and this will be up once I edit all this. All right. Cool. So I will see you guys later.